Hello and welcome back to the NBA DFS Slate Breakdown for Monday, January 29th. We are back. We're going to be breaking down this slate. It is a little bit weird. We got 10 games on FanDuel, 11 on Draftkings. Draftkings has the Denver versus Milwaukee as the last game on the slate, whereas FanDuel does not have that one included. So we will try to touch to everything. I'm going to go the DraftKings matchup tool so we get a little bit more talk of that last game, but I am going to focus on the 10 games that cover both slates. Now, let's get into it. I think it's an interesting slate. Before we do, come join us at LionStar. Right down there, we got promo codes. Parlay Play, Sleeper, Underdog, Chalkboard. All the promo codes are LionStar. You can get up to a 1 month free if you just deposit $10. I will throw out and shout out Sleeper though, because they do have a $500 match, dollar for dollar, up to $500. All right, now let's get into this slate. So break it down. We got an interesting one with 10 games on FanDuel, 11 on DraftKings, and we will jump right into it. Starting with high-owned Jacob Gillard, only 4,100, and likely starting today because Memphis is just a total injury wasteland right now, 30% owned. I get why everybody is going here. He is likely to start. I do have to say, personally, I like going Scottie Pippen over Gillard a little bit more. I think Pippen is just a little bit better. He could get a little more ancillary stats there, and he has produced when getting on the court. So that's just my take. We don't really know what's going on. Both guys could start at point guard and shooting guard today, but we really need to wait for injury news to come out through the rest of the day. If Milwaukee has anybody else out, there's a chance that they could only have 8 guys on that team today, which makes a lot more guys interesting as well. Moving on, we got Jalen Brunson. Look, there's no Julius Randle. Without Randle, Brunson's usage is going to go way up. He's around 1.3 fantasy per minute guy without Randle, and then he's got the Charlotte Hornets on tap. So I think it's a really good spot for Randle, and I'm fine eating some chalk there. Lastly, Luka's been on an absolute tear, and still no Kyrie Irving. So you know that ceiling is there. You can likely count on right around 1.7 fantasy point per minute or a 70 burger. So, you know, with some value on the board, you got to like Luka a little bit. Jalen Suggs. All right. So Markelle Fultz is questionable. If he's out, I like Suggs a little bit more as he just plays a little bit better when he starts the point guard, not at shooting guard. Now, either way, though, I think his price is low enough where it makes some sense. He just went through this run of only playing limited minutes, 23 minutes over his last 5, but he has been around 26, 27 for the entire year. He went back up to 32 last game with no Gary Harris. Gary Harris is out again this time, and then Fultz is questionable, so we could see his minutes kind of right around that 28 mark, which with his fantasy output and a decent matchup, very real chance that he, is right around that 5-6x today and makes him a little bit interesting. My worry with him is there's not a ton of ceiling there. So I am likely staying fairly chalky at the point guard spot. Now let's move over to point guard on DraftKings. High owned, all the same guys. So we will just move it on over to the matchup tool. So highest owned or best matchups, Gillard, Fultz, Drew Holiday. If we go by fantasy point per minute, Holiday, Fultz, Rozier, and Doncic. I do think Rozier is slightly interesting. His price is all the way down to 6,500. He obviously isn't going to have the usage that he had in Charlotte, as there's so many good players around him, but Phoenix Suns, point guards versus Phoenix Suns have been very intriguing matchups. So Would not be surprised if he was able to up his output a little bit on this game tonight. And so that is pretty much a punt play at 6,500, just because what he's been doing fantasy per minute since Miami has not been good versus what he did in Charlotte. So it is kind of a higher priced punt play, but nobody's going to be on it. And we know Rozier has a ceiling when he gets it going. Obviously, Doncic's in a good spot as well. On to shooting guard, high owned, Josh Hart, Quentin Grimes, Dante DiVincenzo. So it is expected that Hart is starting with DiVincenzo, and I would expect Dante to get a few more minutes with Randall out as well, as they, likely need some offense from him and just less players to go around in the rotation. So if he's getting 30 minutes, 31 minutes, he looks pretty interesting at 5.8K. We know he has a ceiling. Without Randall, he's right around 0.9 minutes or 0.9 fantasy point per minute, which is pretty interesting in a decent matchup. Quentin Grimes, coming off the bench, played 23, 24 minutes the last two games. Could get a couple extra minutes. And at, low fours, he's slightly intriguing here. My worry with him, just like Suggs, is upside. Not too sure if there's a ton of upside in that pick. Now, nice little pivot play I got here is Lou Dort, 4,700. He's cheap in a matchup that's going to be a close game, and he's a solid defensive player. I would expect if there is a game that he plays a little bit more, it's going to be in a game like this where he can match up against Anthony Edwards. So I am definitely a little intrigued about Dort. We know we can get into the 30s. He has a high 30s ceiling. And at 4,700, he is a little intriguing, even though he's been pretty terrible the last week. But he could definitely bounce back in this spot in my mind. And over on DraftKings, shooting guard, high own, Quentin Grimes, Cam Thomas, Mikal Bridges. I'm fine with Thomas. He is expected to start again. Ben Simmons is back, though, so the rotation may be a little bit longer today. Now, Simmons has been out for a while, so I don't think he's going to be a full go. It's also a back situation, so they definitely don't want to throw him into the deep end. So Simmons likely limited, but it is something to take into consideration. But Cam Thomas at 6K as a starter is definitely a little bit interesting, as he's right around, one fantasy per minute as a starter, and it is in a decent matchup here. Mikal Bridges is popping up a little bit, and he should at 7,200. He can definitely get it done versus Utah Jazz team. And over on the matchups, we got DiVincenzo, Reeves, Derek White, and Vassell. Vassell is a little bit interesting to me. I'm not getting to a ton of them, but at 6,700 in this type of matchup, I am pretty intrigued. I like this game, and I like targeting that game, as it is two poor teams that aren't great at defense and play at a very high pace. So pretty much pretty solid DFS, outlook there. Small forward wise, Josh Hart should start, does a lot of different things. Decent play there. Quentin Grimes, David Roddy, and DiVincenzo. Memphis is just real short. He played 32 minutes last game, 32 time before he started that, 35 before that. So if he is starting, which we expect him to do, he should play solid minutes here, 32, 33, 4.8K. In a higher paced game, I don't mind going to Roddy. Again, there is the chance that Memphis only has like 8 guys active, and if that's the case, you're going to want some Memphis guys, just because they're all going to be playing big minutes, regardless if it's a blowout or not. And some pivots I like. Bilal Coulibaly. He played 31 minutes last game, 29 the game before that. Minutes are up, in a great spot versus the Spurs team, and can definitely get it going as far as his fantasy points. He has a high ceiling. when he gets it rolling, and he definitely prefers these higher pace games. So Kolabai is a little interesting, and I got to go back to Kyle Kuzma. Dude has a real solid ceiling, 50, maybe even 60 when he really gets it going. Against the Spurs team that doesn't like playing defense and they play high pace, and we got a 240 total. So at 8K with a guy that can put you at that kind of ceiling, it's definitely fairly interesting to me, especially when he's not very high owned. And on to DraftKings, we got Quentin Grimes, Gregory Jackson, and Josh Hart. Touching on Jackson, look, he's really cheap and is right around a fantasy per minute player and could get extra minutes this game, so makes sense to want to go there. He's just a lot more expensive on FanDuel, thus he's not popping there, but makes some sense to go here on DraftKings. And Vince Williams is in the same situation, but he is questionable today. All these guys, are going to be in play today. On to matchups, we got Cody Martin, Dylan Brooks, and Champagne. Brooks is a little bit interesting. He is going against the Lakers. He's going to match up against LeBron a ton. And, he has a nice ceiling game versus them earlier in the year, putting up 40 or 38 in 48 minutes, or 41 minutes, sorry. Don't mind going here, though I do expect him to spend a lot of energy on the defensive side trying to slow down LeBron. And power forward, we got Roddy, Santi Almeida, and Victor Wembanyama. Jonathan Isaac's popping a little bit too here. His minutes did go up a little bit last game or last two games, which was a little interesting. If he's playing 22 minutes, 23 minutes at his price, he is a little interesting. He can produce, 1.1, 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy. So he starts to become a little bit interesting. The issue here, very little ceiling just because of the limited minutes. I love Wemby in this spot. Versus Wizards, nobody really that can slow him down. Great matchups versus centers, and the guy can just do so much as far as block shots, steals, rebounds, points. He can pretty much do it all. Huge ceiling. Do not mind going to him. 10.3K, I think, is just a little too cheap for him in this spot. Another pivot, we talked about Kuzma, but Jared Allen. Now, a reminder that it does look like Evan Mobley is going to be back, which does definitely hurt Jared Allen's ceiling. Maybe not quite as many minutes, and slightly less as far as a fantasy per minute basis. But I did look, and even with Mobley on the court, he is still right around a similar fantasy point per minute output player. So I got to trust the numbers, got to trust the tools, and they're saying he still looks good with Mobley. I wouldn't have thought that. So, got to trust the tools, and definitely going back there a little bit when he's low owned like that. If he was high owned, maybe I would come off a little bit, but it is an interesting spot. Now, power forward on DraftKings, we got Roddy, we got Wemby, got Gregory Jackson, all of which we have talked about, and all are interesting. Matchup-wise, Kawhi Leonard at the very top. I got love for Kawhi. Been all about him for a while, but DraftKings is just doing him dirty. 8.2K. The guy put up 63 a couple games ago, and you're going to put him at 8.2K and his price falling. But look, he's been right around mid-40s or 50s for weeks on end now. I think you got to go back to Kawhi Leonard if you're on DraftKings. He's not high-owned. In a good matchup. Makes a lot of sense there. Cameron Johnson's popping. Don't mind going Cameron Johnson at 5.1K. If he gets hot, he can definitely have a ceiling game. And Banchero is up there as well. I do like Wagner a little bit more than Banchero today, though. On to center. Santi Almeida, 5.5K, 28% owned. Wemby and Nick Claxton. Claxton could have a little less minutes without Simmons. I don't know if they're going to have Simmons play the point or play center. But either way, it could be a couple less minutes for Claxton with their backup center or point guard back. Jaren Jackson's a little interesting too, not getting too much love. And with the Memphis situation, how many minutes he's going to play, his ability to put up fantasy points, he's definitely a little interesting. And we talked about Jared Allen. Pivot that I do like, Domantas Sabonis. I think he's going way overlooked against a pretty awful Memphis Grizzly team. And dude has a 70-point ceiling. So got to be a little bit intrigued for that in my mind. On to center on DraftKings. Roddy, Wemby, Claxton, all are pretty much in play. Claxton's cheaper on DraftKings, so makes a little more interest on DK. Roddy, all Memphis guys are likely to get a ton of minutes and in play tonight. And matchup tool-wise, Wemby on the very top with Gafford right behind it. I do think Gafford's a little interesting, not getting too much of him though. And then Claxton and Lively after that. So that will do it for us today, guys. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Helps us a ton. Also, we're about midway through the season here. NBA All-Star break is right around the corner. Let me know, how you're liking these, if they're helping you, and then maybe any changes you can make. We could make one if you guys want something. I just want to make sure to keep these videos a little shorter. Aim for like 20 minutes or under, as I just think it's more helpful. So I try and rush through stuff, get as much info as I can, and then move on. So, all right, guys, have a good one. Be back tomorrow. Adios. Good luck.